Welcome to the Idea Climbing Podcast. Many self help books and programs are overly complicated with dozens of steps or components. My guest, Doc Thom Mayer, believes we can and should do simple things savagely well. We discuss how to do that in this episode. Doc is the medical director for the NFL Players Association, as well as a prominent figure in the fields of emergency medicine, sports medicine, and leading in times of crisis. He has built a distinguished career focused on athlete and patient health, safety, emergency response, as well as the skills required to lead from the front lines, making significant contributions to clinical practice, medical education, and thought leadership. We dive into topics including where burnout comes from and how simplifying your life can help you avoid it, how to pull out of downward cycles when you're having a bad day, the one thing above all else that you need to embrace to do simple things savagely well, and other golden nuggets of advice. You're going to love this show. Doc, thank you for being here. I appreciate you making the time. This is going to be good.
Oh, I'm delighted. The pleasure is entirely mine. I've been looking forward to it. Always love chatting with you. Love your ideas. Love how you pull the best out of your subjects. So I'm looking forward to you extracting the best from me.
Well, we will definitely do that. We're going to talk about how to do simple things savagely well. Before we get into the tips, the tricks, the strategies, the tactics, and all that good stuff, when it comes to doing simple things savagely well, why is that important to you? Where did it come from? What's your story with that?
Well, it's a great story because it involves one of my closest friends. I have always thought that we've made life more complicated than it really needs to be. It shouldn't be as complicated as we've made it. And I think all of us who are in the business of trying to help others, that's my business, that's your business, should simplify, simplify. Einstein said, simplify, simplify, but not too much. So my great friend, Mark Verstegen, unusual name, is the founder of Team Exos. And Team Exos is the best athletes performance company in the world. Had they been a country in the Paris Olympics, they would have finished sixth in the medal count. That's how elite the athletes and how diverse the sports are that he's involved with. And Marco is the one who said, simple things done savagely well. So combining Einstein and Mark Verstegen, I've tried to do simple things made savagely well.
Well, I like what you said. You said do simple things savagely well, and I forget if it was Einstein, but not too simple. What does too simple mean?
Well, too simple, a simple example is I remember looking at the equation E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass times the square of the speed of light. And I thought, well, that's awfully simple. I mean, why didn't somebody come up with that before? And the reason is that wasn't the equation. It's not the equation. I'll show you the equation, which, as you can see, is not as simple. And in case they couldn't see it, E equals mc squared divided by 1 divided by the square root of 1 minus v, velocity, divided by c squared. Well, that's a little more complicated. So some genius in marketing somewhere decided let's just do E equals mc squared. So yes, simplify, but not too much. And I find the too much is when people fail to make the connections that are simple but have failed to be made, because there's all kinds of corollaries of logical consequences that come out of that. And I'm sure we'll get into that as we talk.
Oh yeah, definitely. Let's start at the top. You're in a situation in life, you can pick which kind. Where do you start to simplify when you realize, oh my, like the 25-step marketing process or the 30 steps to better health and wellness? Where do you, better yet, how do you start to simplify something that's complex?
I think by taking what is considered to be the status quo ante, thinking about it, reflecting on it, and starting to think, well, how do I put it to work? For example, as you know, my most recent book is titled Leadership is Worthless, but Leading is Priceless. What I learned from 9/11, the NFL, and Ukraine, because I was at all those places. So the simple idea is Wait, leadership is worthless? How can that be? There's 50,000 books on Amazon alone on that have leadership in the title. And if I ask my audience, because I do a lot of speaking, as you know, name one that you read and then say, okay, what did it say? And you get, as you said, the 25 this, the 7 other, the 14 things, and they can't remember them. So it's not been simplified enough. So to me, that contrarian idea is very simple. Leadership is worthless because it's what you say. And anybody can say anything. And as you know, they often do say a lot, tediously and at length, usually about themselves. So leading is priceless because it's what we do all day, every day. So the simple thought is leadership is worthless because it's a noun. Leading is priceless because it's a verb, what we do. So I always tell my friends, my audience, anybody who will sit and listen, you got to change the noun to a verb. Once you change the noun to the verb, life becomes so much more simple. And therefore, corollaries come off of that, including the answers are not above us in life, in an organization, in our family. They're within and among us. The question that we should be asking ourselves is not, am I, will I become a leader? You already are. You know, you swing your legs out, you got to say, today I'm a leader. So abandon the wistful, worthless word someday and embrace the word today, because that's actionable. So all simple, but contrarian, if you will.
Well, with what you just said, especially with, today, do you suggest breaking things down into steps, or are you saying it should be so simplified that it's a concept you focus on as opposed to even 5 steps? Where do you fall in between the two?
Yeah, to me, it's I'm okay with lists, but only if they're 3. Any more than 3, and most people aren't going to be able to remember them. Number one, no offense to everybody who's got lists. I always say I don't have a to-do list. I have a to-don't list. And the reason is I take care of it immediately so I don't have to worry about it or think about it or put it on a list and come back to it at some point. You know, to me, if you say, today I'm a leader, the only thing you have to know, I told my boys when they were younger, we have 3 boys, my beautiful and brilliant wife, Maureen, and I have 3 boys. And when they were younger, and I used to drive them to school every day when I was in town, because I've always had to travel a lot in my various positions. But when I was in town, I drove them to school, and I said, as they got out of the truck, one more step in the journey of discovering where your deep joy intersects the world's deep needs. I swear I said this to them. They prefer to take the bus, as you might guess. They don't want to hear that from their dad. But my point was always your deep joy. What lights you up? What's your sense of purpose? What's your true north? Raison d'etre, if you will. There's a lot of ways to refer to it. Because if you start with the world's deep needs, they're infinite, they're unknowable, there's no bottom to that well. But if you start with your deep joy, then and know that and embrace it, then when you say, today I will lead, you don't need 5 steps or 7 steps. It will be, what's my deep joy? And once you know that and stay true to that, burnout's a big issue these days. Well, burnout, simple definition, it's the inability to feel your deep joy. And anything that gets in the way of that is what's causing the burnout and has to be dealt with. So I think there's interconnections that happen there so that, we got a meeting, you've got a work shift, you got a very, very difficult problem to deal with. The simplicity is, today I will lead according to my deep joy. And then, of course, we have values understood, integrity, intelligence, alacrity. Everyone has their own list. What do I do in these difficult circumstances, Doc? And the answer is follow your deep joy, understand that you're leading, and make it consistent with your values. Not that hard. Now, I'm not saying it's easy in the action, but it's easy to know, okay, this is my direction.
So with what you said, again, the contrast here is that you every day is a gift, and you lead with joy every day and you do it day by day and your life builds? Or is it you lead with joy every day, but you still have to plan a week out, a month out, a year out? Where do you fall between those two as far as making plans and living day to day? Today is my joy. I'm going to live with joy.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, the dynamic tension between both. The proximal today I will lead. I certainly think, okay, in the broad scheme of things, how does this day and each action in that day fit in the broader picture of, what I do and how I do it? I founded a company of emergency physicians, a group of emergency physicians. We had three rules. Rule number one, always do the right thing for the patient. Rule number two, always do the right thing for the people who take care of the patient, the docs, the nurses, the other essential services people. And rule number three, you know where this is going. Don't confuse rule number one and rule number two. And we do that all the time. So if I've got a meeting today to talk about a specific issue, question number one, is this good for the patient? If it's not, don't do it. That was a short meeting. That was a short idea. Then how is it good for the people? Take care of the patient. And once you have that kind of clarity, you begin to see the connections that weren't there before. And you see how what I have to do today and the issues and problems that go with that fit within that broader context of this week, this month, this year. I have these goals and what occurs. And I find that taking that approach illuminates the questions, answers, decisions, the leading of today really helps illuminate that broader schedule that we're talking about, because you have these sort of epiphanous moments that you say, okay, I got it. Now I see how this fits. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And that explains day by day and ongoing. Once you break it down, living with joy, whatever your mantra might be. Let's talk about doing simple things savagely well. Once you know what to do on a day-to-day basis, talk a little. First of all, what do you mean by savagely well?
Well, it's execution. The other part of that business I was talking about, emergency physicians, but you can put in, car dealership, banking, private wealth management, because I've spoken to all those kinds of groups, and tap out patients and tap out customers, partners, relationships, if you will. And we'll talk about relationships in a minute. But when you begin to look at it that way and see savagely well, it's figuring it out. And then, we talked about the science of clinical excellence, the art of customer service, and the business of execution. That's what guided us in addition to the three rules I told you about. When you begin to look at your business, your life, your family, your relationships that way, it becomes simpler, and it's about how do you execute increasingly well. My guys, I have 2,500 players, active players in the NFL at any given time, and 20,000 former players. They go through film study, and people talk about film study like it's relaxing. No, I mean, you're breaking down film. You're what I call making failure your fuel, so that you're able to see what didn't work, why it didn't work, do an analysis of it, an exegesis, as we'd say in theology. I was not only a linebacker when I was in college. Now, what's the job of a linebacker? Blow stuff up. I mean, my job is to just blow up the offense's plans. But I was also a theology major. So linebacker theology major, that's probably some kind of demonic thing right there. But what's the job of in theology is to integrate, to pull things together, to see and discover meaning which was not apparent on the top layer at the veneer of the surface. So it's kind of a weird juxtaposition. And we use the term exegesis all the time in theology. But the exegesis is, okay, how do I take what I wanted to happen, what did happen, look at the delta, the difference, and say, how can we do it better? How can we make it easier over time? How did we fail to meet the customer, patient, client, partner needs? And how are we going to do it differently the next time by making failure our fuel?
When you start doing things savagely well, because you mentioned burnout, how do you do things savagely well without going completely overboard and just burning yourself out from going too fast?
Well, I find that burnout, first of all, it's a ratio. It's a ratio of job stressors, because burnout is about work, not about your family. Depression would be life, and there's so corollaries between those two that aren't spoken about as much as they should be, in my opinion. But if you take a simple ratio, if the answer is burnout is the inability to feel my deep joy at work, and then say, okay, give me an equation. Give me an equation a fourth grader could understand. The numerator is job stressors. And in our life, from all the guests, wonderful guests you've had on, job stressors are higher. In many respects, you could say people listen to my podcast because job stressors are higher and I need help with those job stressors. So the denominator, though, most people would call it resilience or resiliency. I don't love that term, and here's why. If I say, Mark, the reason you're burned out is you're not resilient enough. Now, I didn't say, but you might well have heard, I'm the problem. I'm the problem. I got job stressors going out the roof, and you're telling me I'm the problem. So I don't use that term exclusively. I use the term adaptive capacity. And the reason is a football story from college. I was a middle linebacker. I started when I was a freshman. For a middle linebacker, Mike linebacker, that's unusual because he's the signal caller. He's the captain of the defense on the field and has to call the signals himself. So they don't usually give that to a freshman, but they did in my case. And before the first game, the coach was very nervous about, I've never started a freshman in the middle before. And he walked out on the field in front of the whole team and he said, Mayer, my linebackers are agile, mobile, and hostile. What do you think of that? I said, oh, coach, that's me. I'm agile, mobile, hostile. I said, but I'm the Mike. I'm the middle linebacker. I got to read and react. I got to have my head on a swivel. I got to adapt all game long. And he thought for a second and said, my linebackers are agile, mobile, hostile, and adaptile. True story. And so, but that's what we have to be. We have to be adaptile, which goes over a little better than the resiliency thing, if you will. So if I want to reduce burnout, let's go to our fourth grade child. What do? Well, Dad, you decrease the numerator, job stressors, or you increase the denominator, adaptive capacity, preferably both, Dad. And so it becomes simple. It becomes easy. I'm not saying it's easy to decrease job stressors, but if we don't have a simple way in which to frame it, to be able to say, okay, what are the job stressors and what would I do to be able to lower them? And the people who are burned out will tell you if you ask them.
So I love adaptile. That's just freaking awesome. How do you stay adaptile? Do things savagely well, stay adaptile, however you want to phrase it. How do you do that on down days? What do you do to pull out of a downward cycle to stay adaptile, to stay doing things savage, to keep doing things savagely well on those days where you're just like, I might not even want to get out of bed?
So 3 things. Number one, remember I said not 4 or 5, got to be 3. So 3 things is to always keep in mind every day, every team member is a leader. Lead yourself, lead your team. Now, corollary to that is everyone else that you encounter in the course of the day is a leader, doing the best they can to be able to lead themselves, their team, their family. So not only do I see it in myself and my own team, but I see it in others. Number 2, every person, every team member, every leader, because every team member is a leader, is involved, just like my athletes in the National Football League, in a cycle of performance, rest, and recovery. Performance, rest, and recovery. We have neglected rest and recovery, and that's what's hurting us on the adaptile front. The ability to heal, to reload, to rethink, and be able to say, okay, what? And I'll come back to that in a minute in terms of 2 things I do every day that I think everyone can benefit from. But the third is, so first, every team member is a leader and every person is a leader. Number 2, they're a performance athlete. Let's get serious about rest and recovery to stay adaptile. And number 3, the work begins within. Because we want to reform the system and processes in which we work, no matter where we work, a bank, a restaurant, football field, the emergency department in my case, then we have to be mindful about how we're going to decrease job stressors. That has to start with us so that we can then think of how we're going to repair the system. So the work begins within. And the two things are very simple. Today, wake up, swing your legs out, put your feet on the ground. Today, I'm a leader. And that has an exclamation point behind it, not a question mark, not someday or if. It's today. And the question is how, if there's going to be a question mark. So I start my day as many times as I can, which is almost every day because I have to plan it in, spending about 15 minutes, cup of coffee, no weapons of mass distraction, no computers. And I think to myself, who are three people I'm grateful for and why? Why am I grateful for them? And I try to reflect on that. And then by the end of the day, I try to ping them, either call them, text them, email, whatever's the easiest, simplest way to give the message. I was thinking about things I'm grateful for and people, and I thought of you. Just wanted to let you know. I can't tell you how many people have said, you have no idea how much that meant to me. Not a long missive, not a 5-paragraph email, but just a brief communication. And then if you close your day, it's called 3 good things. Came out of the sense of positive psychology. Before you go to sleep at night, simply think about 3 good things that happened that day and what role you had in helping them happen. And you know what? I call it bracket your day that way, tends to take on a different meaning than it might have otherwise. And there might be people who say, well, that's stupid, that's silly, that's too simple. Try it. Just try it.
That is awesome. We have covered a lot of ground in a relatively short period of time. When it comes to doing simple things savagely well, whether it's reiterating something you already said, maybe something we haven't touched on yet. If someone's listening or watching and they get it, they love it. If you were to say, if you want to do that and do it well, at least do this one thing. At least do this. Above all, what would you tell them to do?
Embrace the fact that you're a leader, that in fact you are leading. And I'll tell you why that's the most important. Too many of us in our lives develop a victim's mentality. We think something is happening to us. And that's not the case. I mean, when you say to yourself, today I am a leader, how will I lead? The victim mentality goes away. It's not there anymore. You don't want to have a tombstone that says, I would have done great things, but my boss wouldn't let me. The boss is someone who thinks that he's the most important person in the room. But the leader is someone who knows that her job is to make everyone else in the room feel that they're the most important person in the room. So that takes us to a different dimension, takes us from a noun to a verb, from the passive voice to the active voice. And it helps us understand that we're not a victim, we're an actor.
This has been amazing. I appreciate you. And if people love what they hear and see, where's the best place or places to find you online?
Well, I'm going to give you and your audience my personal email, which is just ThomMayerMD Now, there's also a website, but I got nothing to sell you. Everything on my website's free. That's just ThomMayerMD.com. My point is, if your listeners want to give me questions, need help, have feedback, or even better, pushback on why I'm wrong and why I should rethink things, reach out. If I can help you, I will. The only reason to ever talk or write a book is to try to help people, and that's my goal. So I'll tell you what my deep joy is, because somebody always asks that, and I know you will. My deep joy is helping others find and fully express their deep joy.
That is awesome. Thank you again, Doc. I appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for having me on. Let's do it again sometime.
And scene.
Yeah.